Everybody said, who marched, that every morning when they started the march, they started exactly where they left off, and they would start with a prayer, and they would end with a prayer. So there was a lot of solemnity, a lot of religious interjections here that kept their faith up and their motivation up so that they would continue walking. Can you imagine getting up and walking? It was like a total of, from July the 4th to September 5th, that's all of July and all of August, about 60 days of getting up every morning, putting your shoes on, and then walking for 10, 15 miles that day. And of course, this is the picture that I show and that I will never forget. And this is our website. If you want to see more pictures of what happened, of all the photos and all of the information that we collected, we put it on this website. If you're interested in going to that website, I don't know if you can read it, but it's farmworkers2016.wordpress.com. And just one final thing, just for you to know, that the lawsuit that was filed is called Medrano versus Ali. Medrano being Pancho Medrano, who was with UAW and who was also beat up and arrested by the Texas Rangers, filed a lawsuit against the Texas Rangers. And in 1974, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that the Texas Rangers could never be used to thwart any kind of constitutionally protected actions that workers would take. And so that was a huge victory, because if you know the history of, well, you know, you've been hearing it, the history of Texas Rangers. But in terms of labor, the Texas Rangers always were called in to bust up union offices. When Yucca Powell was in the valley, organizing cotton pickers and onion pickers in the 30s, they came in and busted up their offices in Harlingen. And so you can see how they were used time and again by the growers, really, by the people with power, to keep workers down as quickly as possible. And so in 1974, I'm very proud to say that the Farm Workers Union, farm workers, because of what they did, were able to curtail any future activities by the Texas Rangers in the state of Texas that would hurt farm workers and other workers who were trying to organize. So that's really all I have to say. I don't know, I'm sure I ended sooner than my time allotted, but I don't know if you want to ask questions, or I don't even, whatever you want to do. I don't know, what time is it?
Yeah, there's time. I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, you had mentioned that it's hard. It's hard to get things through the legislature. And I do want people to understand that what we're trying to do is not easy. And it does not happen, it doesn't happen in 30 days, or it takes time. So can you elaborate on that and let them know how long it took you to get through some of these things, okay?
Yeah. Before we even presented legislation to the legislators, we had to do a lot of political work. And I started to tell you that in 1979, we had our first farm worker convention in Pharr, Texas. And so at that convention, we had 1,000 farm workers there. And we were so under the radar that people didn't understand what was going on. But as soon as we had 1,000 people together, the politicians got so interested. And so we had, the next year we had every politician you could imagine participating in our conventions. And so then we decided, well, let's start pushing for legislation. And that's when we worked on workers' compensation, unemployment and let me tell you, once again, let me tell you that in every instance of legislation that we passed, it was because we had been excluded. And so we passed workers' comp, unemployment comp. You know, farm workers are unemployed most of the time because the seasons are up, the seasons are down, and they don't work for 2-3 weeks. Never were compensated for those periods, those days. So what do? What do workers do? Well, those workers had to, stick it out, right? And there was, in the 66, there was no welfare. There was no food stamps. There was nomás lo que le hicimos la polvadera. It would give us powdered eggs and powdered milk and everything else, remember? So anyway, it was very hard. And so in 79, we started that. And then we did all the political, we registered voters, we did all the political work, we educated voters, and then we went and talked to legislators, the ones that were in our area, and we said, will you carry this legislation? And so if they said yes, then we would work for them. We never charged them a penny. We did it because we wanted them to be committed to us. And so slowly and surely, we elected Chuy Hinojosa, who was a state rep at that time. We elected Alex Moreno. We elected a slew of legislators in South Texas that changed, and then they carried our banner. And the other part of it was that many of them were farm workers themselves. So we didn't have to run around explaining to them about the short-handled hoe. We didn't have to explain to them how hard it was to work in the hot sun. Chuy Hinojosa talks about how he picked cotton in the hot sun of South Texas. And so that's how we did it. So what I'm saying is that, and so then when we went to pass legislation, we had to still do the other three things, which was file a lawsuit, right? Which took years. File a lawsuit, win it, and then the Supreme Court kicked it over to the legislature, and then we had to convince 76 state reps, right, and 18 senators that they had to vote for us. And so it was a lot of lobbying. We took huge lobbying trips to Austin, farm workers everywhere, and we would lobby every legislator. And one of the things that we decided to do, because if you lobby, you know how everybody leaves these nice little things on the legislators' desks, these tapes of Texas, on plexiglass, nice things. We decided, well, we don't have money for that. So the first year that we did that, we got green bell peppers. And farm workers, I said, okay, bring me some green bell peppers. So we got these green bell peppers, we washed them really good, and we got a toothpick, and we put it inside the green bell with a sign saying, vote for a House bill, whatever, right? And we put that on each legislator's desk. It cost us absolutely nothing, but it was the most attractive thing because everybody was saying, what is that green bell pepper doing on my desk, right? So it was very attractive to them. And the next year we did onions. I mean, every year we do something else. And so it became, what do you have now? And so there's different ways of doing things. I mean, we've never had money. That's the beauty of it, really. It's really the beauty of it because we're not committed to anybody. Nobody says, I own you, you have to do this. And so everything we did was pura voluntad de gente. It was really wonderful. But you have to have a campaign. It can't be just, let me go and get this thing introduced and let me see if you can pass it. Yeah?
So I have a question. Were the workers that were Braceros program, were they part of the huelga?
¿Sabes qué? It's really funny how Stark County is. Stark County really is, they're U.S. citizens. They're really, I've never, I don't know, I just don't see it. There was an attempt by the growers to import Mexicanos from Mexico there, to Roma, and to be strike breakers. They do it all the time, right? They do it all the time. And so we got some support from the ZTM from Mexico, and they said, we're going to try not to have workers cross the border for this. And so there was. But Braceros, I know Braceros are everywhere. And so they were probably part of it in some way, but we never saw that as another group that was being used. It was all local.
Yes.
It was really all local people. Yes?
How many years did it take to have it passed?
Okay, let me tell you, I started organizing, and this is the way we were taught to do. How do you organize people who, like Jose Angel says, who are poor, who are uneducated and young? These weren't necessarily young people, but anyway, we got trained by Fred Ross, who was a supreme organizer for the union, and we started off doing house meetings in the summer of in fall of '78. In the fall of '78, me and about 6 organizers who were all farm workers. They were just out of the fields, started doing house meeting campaigns. And the house meeting campaigns that we did was, we would ask people that we knew to have a meeting in our house, in a colonia. The beauty of the structure of the valley was that poor people lived in colonias. And the reason, of course, was that they didn't have to pay sewage. That's the beauty, but also the not beauty, right? And so they lived very poorly, but they had their little house, and it was in a colonia. And that's where farm workers lived. And so we would have a series of 3 house meetings in each colonia. So we would get to most of the people there. We would ask them 3 questions. What are your problems? And they would tell us all of their problems. And then the next question was, what are the solutions? And then they would say, these are the solutions. We have to change, we have to change this. The growers have to pay attention to us, or any other solution. They said, and then I would ask them, and who's going to do it? And so then they'll have to say, I said, I can't do it by myself. So then they would have to say, well, we have to do it. And so that's how we formed the union. And we did house meetings. I did house meetings every night, my poor kids, right? Every night for the rest of that season. Until 1979, January of 79, we had 1,000 farm workers I knew every farm worker who was there at that convention, because I had met them. So anyway, that's how you do it. And then you show power, right? You show power in people, not necessarily in money, because we never had any. We never gave a dime to the politicians, not one dime. So that you develop power. And then so once we got that, we had to elect the politicians, right? And then the first legislation that we passed was workers' comp in 1983. So you count the years. 1983. And this was a special session called by Mark White and Hobby, Lieutenant Governor Hobby, where we had it passed. Yes.
You said that you were trained by Fred Ross, Jr.
Yes.
Not senior, right?
The old man.
Fred Ross Senior.
Yeah.
There's a Fred Ross Jr.
Yeah, his son.
And basically, they come from a school of organizing.
Right.
And that was in CSO in California, which sets up chapters for Dolores Huerta.
Right.
Dolores is from New Mexico. But I noticed in your pictures, you had a picture of another gentleman who actually is from here.
Ernie.
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 Ernie